There were several stories told on Tuesday at the little gathering up at Koa. One of those stories was a Sufi story. But in that Sufi story there was one sentence left out purposely, which allowed the story to meld into the other two, to evoke in those who were there some very interesting comments. But in retelling this story and in adding the sentence that was omitted, when we put it together with another story, we create a different scenario. Now let's see what these two Sufi stories do for us today. And those who heard the story the other day have the possibility of being able to recognize the subtleties of these stories, the energies of them, and how, when we bring them together, like the ingredients in a pot, they bring about a different taste. The first Sufi story was about a very rich merchant, but he was also a follower of the Sufi faith. And he had to go to a far distant place because there was someone there who owed him a great deal of money. So he wanted to take this journey, but he was in a dilemma because he had the most beautiful concubine that one could imagine, and he did not want to leave her on her own for fear that some other man would come along and steal her. So the merchant decided that he would put his beautiful concubine in the care of another Sufi friend who was known for his piety and his purity. So the merchant took his concubine to his Sufi friend and asked him to take care of her. His name was Hariri, and Hariri agreed. But when Hariri caught sight of the concubine, she was so beautiful. He was totally smitten. But being a pure and pious man, he was able to restrain his desire and immediately went off to his own Sufi sheikh teacher to get his advice in this dilemma. So Hariri went to his sheikh and told him the situation, and his sheikh said, "Oh, you have to go and see Sheikh Yusuf. He will be able to solve your dilemma." So Hariri went off to seek out Sheikh Yusuf. But when he came to the place in which Sheikh Yusuf lived, everyone said to him, "Oh, don't go to him. He's the biggest heretic in town. Don't go to him." So Hariri turned around and went back to his town, and he said to his own Sufi sheikh, "Oh, I heard that Sheikh Yusuf was a heretic." But his sheikh said, "No, go to Sheikh Yusuf. He will be able to solve your dilemma." So Hariri set off once again, and he came to the house of Sheikh Yusuf. He found a palace. It was a mansion. And when he was taken in to the presence of Sheikh Yusuf, he found Sheikh Yusuf lying on satin cushions with a flagon of wine beside him, fondling a young boy who was sitting beside him. And Hariri was shocked. What was he doing here in the presence of this? But when Sheikh Yusuf began to speak, his words were so elevated that Hariri went into a state of ecstasy. But when he came out of this elevated state, Sheikh Yusuf looked at him smilingly and said, You're asking the question why I live like this. And let me tell you, this boy who sits beside me is my son. That flagon you see there is filled with fresh water. The book that we are reading is the Koran. And the reason I live like this is to disallow those merchants who have beautiful concubines, bringing them to put them in my care. And the second Sufi story is about a Sufi teacher who was a very, very poor fisherman. And every day when he caught his fish, he would give them away to the poor in his town, keeping only a couple of fish heads for himself to make soup for his evening meal. Now there were a great number of followers who followed this Sufi teacher and revered him for his good works. But amongst those who followed this fisherman Sufi was also a merchant. And this merchant had occasion to go on a journey to ply his trade, and it so happened that he was going to the town in which the fisherman Sufi's own master, the great Ibn Arabi, lived. So the fisherman sheikh asked the merchant, would he please go to Ibn Arabi, give him his greetings, and ask him, was there something a message that he would like to impart to him, because the fisherman sheikh felt that his own spiritual endeavors were languishing somewhat. So when the merchant arrived at the abode of Ibn Arabi, to his very great surprise, he saw Ibn Arabi living in a palace with beautiful young women as his servants and handsome young men tending his needs, again sitting on satin cushions, smoking a hubble-bubble pipe and eating sweet meats. And the merchant was very, very surprised. But after giving the usual honorifics to Ibn Arabi and giving the greetings of his fisherman teacher, he asked the question that had been asked of him, is there a message that you would like to give to my teacher? And Ibn Arabi said, tell your teacher that he is too worldly. Well, the merchant was affronted by this. How dare he, this fellow, living in all of this opulence, dare to speak of his teacher, who was so humble and poor and giving, as being too worldly? He was quite angry inside. But he went off, and when he came back to his own fisherman teacher, and the fisherman teacher asked him, what did Ibn Arabi say? The merchant said, well, I don't know how he dared to say so, but he said that I should tell you that you're too worldly. And the fisherman teacher had tears rolling out of his eyes, and he said to the merchant, we can have as much wealth as our soul can support without forgetting God. Ibn Arabi is living in a greatly elevated state of spirituality. And as for myself, very often, when I cook my fish heads up at night. I wish that they were whole fish. What is the difference or the similarity between these two stories? Or what is it that arises for you as an awareness? Look at your own lives. How are you living? Are you giving to the detriment of yourself, but still wishing that what you have is more? Are you living in a state of poverty consciousness, thinking that to be spiritual, you have to be poor? What is the meaning of these two stories for you? And more importantly, what is the law, the arcane law that lies behind these two stories?
I like the first story. I like the way that he is, the way that he's living, and really what image he has, whatever it is that people imagine is not anything like he is, he's more honest and he's more like, I like the first story. I like the guy. I hope I'm like him.
In the first story, the guy was attached to giving and doing the right thing, whereas the rich man had no attachment to the riches, and they had the richness of spirit because of that.
seems like it's what comes to me is all is not as it seems. All is not as it seems. And we can look at something from the outside and make judgments and assessments about it, or about people, or about possibly the motivations behind what others are doing, and we don't know, you know, and we can look at the holiest of people, and in their hearts there's a meanness of spirit towards themselves. So the challenge is to bring our own self into balance.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's about us.
And when it's about us, when it's about us, being careful who you have around you as well. Yeah, I just get a picture of these animals sort of wanting to bite you in a sense if you're not careful what sort of people you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, of course. Of course.
Be discerning.
Absolutely. Discrimination. Yes. Discernment. Yes. There are many stories about that, we know, and appearances and perceptions. But now we're looking behind this to find out what it is that this law is. And so, in keeping us pointed in that direction, we do have to again bring ourselves back to that place where the movement of life and all its appearances relative to this, right here, and its meeting place. How it works, what is our relationship with life now? Knowing that life is only perceptions, experiences that enter into this space to present a reality for the moment. So what is this? If we can grasp this law that's related to the abundance of life and how it is that this is created for us, we can come to an understanding of even what lies behind that. So these stories are very significant relative to that. But it does require looking at ourselves and where we're at relative to what it is that is presented to the world. And that's sometimes not easy to do, because we don't realize that we are presenting a face to the world. Coming back to I'm a this or I'm a that. I have my own instance of that. In getting correspondence from Marianne overseas about our coming trip, she's put in the programs that it's Qigong and storytelling. Well, when I see this Qigong and storytelling, I get a little bit peeved. Because I would never say, I'm a storyteller. Do you hear what I'm saying? it's put out there, Qigong and meditation. Not a meditation teacher, just meditation. Then everybody is responsible and included. But if you say storytelling, then people are going to come to be entertained. It's not an entertainment. Do you see the subtlety? What are we presenting to the world? When we say, I do this or I am that.
Limitation.
Limitation. And a perception that others can have, an expectation that others can have. What are we presenting to the world? What is this face that we're putting forth? If we can look at that and see a blank space, we have a chance to find out what the arcane law behind the provision of all our needs, whether they be a diamond encrusted house or a hut in the forest. It's all related. But it comes back to this recognition. What do these stories mean insofar as this is concerned? So ask yourself. Let's see what comes out in the coming days.